I'd like to address the governor of the state of New York, Andrew Cuomo, and the director of the Department of Environmental Conservation, Basil Sagos. All my friends and colleagues up on the St. Lawrence Seaway and Lake Ontario, and of course the people on Lake Erie, Lake Michigan, and Lake Superior, the Great Lakes. You've got a unique flooding and lakefront shoreline damage mechanism known as the Moses-Sanders Dam. It's causing enormous amounts of property damage and billions upon billions of dollars in destruction to public and private property because of the operations of the hydroelectric dam owned by Canada and the United States. The Moses-Sanders Dam, which I believe began operations in 1957, about 3 years before Clifford and Anita Witham opened the marina at Harris Bay on Lake George. Now, the destruction mechanism, the destructive forces of the Moses-Sanders Dam, owned by the state of New York, operated and controlled by the state of New York, are the exact same, precisely the same destruction forces and destruction mechanism of dam number 230 at Ticonderoga at the Lachute River, where it exits Lake George. To the governor of the state of New York, the attorney general of the state of New York, and to the director of environmental conservation, Basil Sagos, the control and operation of Dam 230 at Ticonderoga, the inspection reports of the Army Corps of Engineers, huge amounts of media coverage from the flushing operations, huge amounts of mill waste and huge amounts of leachate, sewage leachate and sewage from Lake George have been flushed for decades using Dam A, or Dam 230, in the exact same fashion as the Moses-Sanders Dam. In other words, what's going on in Lake George is the exact same destruction process that is experienced on Lake Ontario. I know that the state of New York is handing out billions, apparently, in damages to what's happening to the lakefront properties on Lake Ontario. And I would suggest that Clifford and Anita Witham's marina, having been destroyed many times by the dam controlled and operated by the state of New York and International Power Corporation, the hydroelectric dam at Ticonderoga, Dam 230, operated and controlled by the Lake George Park Commission, Department of Environmental Conservation, New York State Conservation Commission, and the state of New York. The exact same destruction that's happening on Lake Ontario is what wiped out the Witham Marina 5 years in a row, from 1965 until 1970. I would ask the Environmental Conservation Department of the state of New York to provide the Withams some damages, like they're providing millions of dollars in damages for people on Lake Ontario and on the St. Lawrence Seaway. It's the exact same destruction process on Lake George as it is on Lake Ontario and the St. Lawrence. The exact same damming and ponding back of water for the production of electricity happened in the exact same fashion on Lake George. And the flushing of the environmental pollution in Lake George down the Lachute River and the flushing of the Lachute River to Lake Champlain are the exact same processes that were employed to destroy property on Lake Ontario. So I think, if we're going to pay damages, I think it might be time for the Witham family to receive the reparations, the Witham family to receive the reimbursement, if you will, the damages for what the state of New York, the Lake George Park Commission, and the International Power Corporation caused to the Witham family marina from 1965, 1966, 1967, 1968, 1969, and actually it happened again in 1970. So if we're going to be paying out damages in the millions of dollars to lakefront property owners on Lake Ontario and the St. Lawrence River, I believe that the Witham family are entitled to the very same treatment. To equal protection under the law, perhaps, would be a better way to put it. So to Roger Smith and to David Wick at the Lake George Park Commission, to the Fund for Lake George attorney Tom West, to the Darren Freshwater Institute at Bolton Landing, New York, the Lake George Land Conservancy, up at Raybrook, the DEC offices at Raybrook, New York, for the Lake George Wild Forest. I believe that the destruction of the Witham Marina, causing devastation to Clifford and Anita Witham's marina operations, I believe the state of New York should pay to the Witham family damages and grant money just like they're giving to everybody else. Why are the Withams left out? Why is it that the Witham family don't get a nickel? Not a penny, not a dime, not a dollar for all the destruction caused by Dam A, Dam 230, controlled and operated by the state of New York since the 1940s, the 1930s. It's only fair. It's equitable. All the links and information you could possibly ask for are posted below. And to all my friends on the Great Lakes, Lake Ontario, the St. Lawrence Seaway, it's the exact same ponding back of water. The generating of hydroelectric power, making billions for the Wall Street investor class, and making billions for the state of New York. The state of New York's getting fat cat rich off of the ponding back of water. It's just that simple. So to David Wick, Roger Smith, Basil Sagos, Tom West, Fund for Lake George, the Lake George Association, they're witnesses to all this, right along with huge numbers of property owners on Lake George. The exact same destruction processes, precisely the same scenario. There is no difference between what happened to the Witham family marina and what's happening on Lake Ontario and the St. Lawrence Seaway. Folks, I'll leave it right there. And Andy Cuomo, Basil Sagos, I think you should ought to contact me and make some sort of arrangements to provide grant money and, reimbursement and damages for what the state of New York's Dam 230, the damned Dam A at Ticonderoga, caused to the Witham family marina. Folks, I'll leave it right there. And as always, hasta la vista, and God bless, and you betcha, we're coming back.